To be here. I say that every day, and every day it's true. Today's show is really about life transition, and that applies to pretty much everybody every day because everything's changing and everybody's got to adapt and react and respond in a most positive way. The key word is adversity, and a lot of times it can be viewed differently as either something that's a challenge or something that's also an opportunity to learn and overcome. Chat's wide open. We depend on chat to be as relevant and um, positively directed as possible to provide a lot of quality takeaways. So, with that said, I'll turn it over to Dave. Dave can catch us up, especially for the people who don't know Dave that well or should, and what his initial views on adversity is. Dave.
Good morning, Don, Jason. It's good to be here again, as always. Just a little background on me. Retired naval officer, 20 years, cybersecurity professional and private investigator who likes to help people secure their information, and also on the mental health, which drove me to Don, and how we can help each other out on the transition side of the mental health aspects of transitioning, and the story that I've gone through with my history. And adversity has been a big part of that. The challenges that we face in life in general as veterans transitioning out, and then anybody in general who's transitioning or having an adversity of something that's coming up that's blocking their growth, blocking their ability to move on, changing your mindset and how do you reframe it so that you can get beyond it and take the lessons that are learned from the adversity that's being put in front of you. So I think it's a good topic for today in our bigger concept of transitioning as well.
Well, that sounds like a great way to kick this off, and moving right over to Jason and getting his views on adversity and a little bit of a kind of update for Jason. Jason?
Thanks, Don. Great to be here with you guys today again. Yeah, it's a great topic. I was a little bit excited when I heard the term for the day, the word of the day today, because that's an interesting conversation. I just want to see where it goes today. Hopefully our community really pipes up and gives us some good information to talk about today. I'm excited. Jason Jurado, my company is One Path Coaching. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, 89 to 94. I've been doing my own business since 2015 part-time. I went full-time in 2021. So a couple opportunities to face adversity in my life, to see, the challenges that are out there. As you were talking, Dave, the quote that came to mind, I'm going to probably butcher it, but it says, if you find yourself in hell, keep going, just push through. And there's opportunity for us to learn in the moment through adversity and to take the lessons and to course correct. And then there's times when you push through. There's times when you just keep going and you make things happen. And then you have the opportunity when you get through it to look back and to take the lessons as you go to the next stage. So adversity can show up in different ways at different times for us. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Well, that's terrific. Actually, there's a song saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. I forget, maybe it's Chase Atkins or somebody like that, but it's a cool song. Go ahead.
Old Churchill quote, I think, if you're going through hell, just keep going.
Yeah, I guess it's a common quote because it's so true and it's so easy to understand and appreciate. We've got Carrie here who starts us off with a little bit of a joke, and your comments are showing up, Carrie. I found a way to get up in the morning using self-rising flour and polish. This way I can rise and shine. I don't know how you come up with these every day, but you never miss. Thanks so much, Carrie. And, adversity is something that's easier embraced than avoided. And, dealing with it is something you do on your own terms, not on its terms. So sometimes you're not ready for it. Sometimes you can deal with some of it. But it's really about overcoming it, or in most cases, it could overcome you, back you up, and really stigmatize you going forward. And I do believe, just like Jason alluded to, it's a learning experience. It's a stretching experience. When everything is comfortable, when everything's easy, when everything's expected, it's great, but it makes you softer. And life doesn't really consult you when it confronts you. And every day you get surprises. Hopefully it's good as bad, but you also learn that that's part of life. And it's not something people should really take personally. And it's something that everybody goes through. So I think the key thing is, really focusing on gratitude, appreciating who you are, what you are, who you're with, and then not allowing adversity to overcome you or overwhelm you, because it's very easy to. And then again, you get stronger, you get better. What was an adversity 10 years ago would be a walk in the park today. And what an adversity coming through, it depends on if you're used to it. I know that no matter how awful something is, if you've been in it, around it, and through it enough times, you kind of know the lay of the land, you know the time frame, you know what's required. And that's another important thing, not building false expectations that, hey, this significant thing happened today, I'll be done with it tomorrow. So I know everybody here, the three of us, have faced adversity in different ways. How have you found you've matured and evolved over time, Dave, with adversity?
God, that's a loaded question, because there's a lot of times where I've cowered. Honestly, I've recoiled and said, well, I'm just beaten, and I've had to regroup. And as you were talking, you often see me writing notes, and Jason, you always come back to the word community, and having a network of friends, family, professionals, colleagues. And I say professionals, and I mean medical, whatever, therapy professionals or professional colleagues, separate those two out, and being able to reframe what it is the adversity is trying to teach us, what strengths that we don't recognize in ourselves that we have, and or that we need to build up to overcome that adversity. So, and to directly answer your question, how has it affected me? I've recoiled initially early in my life, recognized through time and that network, okay, what is it I need to do to overcome it? And now I've almost come to embrace the challenges of life, because I've overcome so much and been able to be told and accept the adversity I've overcome, recognizing that I've overcome it, that I embrace the challenges. And, my racing, I'm going through an adversity right now, a challenge right now with some physical issues that I'm not where I need to be. Reframe my perspective, and no, I'm where I need to be right now based on what's happened. What do I need to do to overcome it? Talk to my doctors, talk to my running coaches. Okay, what will happen? And it takes time. And as you were also talking, Don, I was thinking of the graph where, you got to have a goal, and adversity is going to, try to keep you from that goal. And it's got to be a strong goal to get to, but it's not a straight line. And the mountainous, sinuous rise as you build strength, and those mountains that we have to climb. Okay, you got to have some rest on the other side, and then a new adversity will build you stronger. But it's a net. It's like the Dow or the stock exchange. It's still going up even though there's downs. So I think those are some analogies that I would present there to answer your question.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And a lot of times you should just give in and accept a hit, right? Because sometimes you exasperate it or make it a bigger focus or put it on the to-do list. But I think that's the whole thing with maturing, evolving. The older you get, the easier adversity is in some ways, because you're closer to the end than the beginning. And something's going to take you out. So it's a question of when and what. And do you want to be, a lot of times I found is making a friend of adversity.
Yeah.
Inviting it in, not welcoming it too much, but knowing it's going to be there for a while, and knowing you don't want to beat yourself up over it, because it's all what your perspective is. Some people's biggest challenge is somebody's easiest chore. And until you understand what other people are going through, and how difficult it is. And I think just knowing you have some choice, you have some control, you have some impact, that if you can't eliminate it, maybe you could modify it, minimize it. And I think you make a great point, Dave, is get some more information. Usually ignorance is your biggest enemy because you hear something, you never dealt with it before. What you did hear from it was pretty significant. But as you break it down, you get different viewpoints. And I think that's what Google and YouTube are so good at. You can start breaking it down into small pieces and dealing with one little thing at a time, and knowing you're making progress. Because if there's hope, there's some reason to feel confident about the future. Dave?
I think as you talk, I always new things come to my mind as you guys are talking, and it's to your analogies, break it down. Before each of the marathons I've done, the two Marine Corps marathons in particular, they've said the morning prayer is one step, next step, left foot, right foot. Okay, one step, break it down. It's not a matter of winning the race. It's a matter of just putting one foot in front of the other, and analogous to what are my steps that I'm going to take in solving my problem. That's just my quick point.
Well, that's the same thing as how to eat an elephant, right? Yeah. One piece at a time. Nobody wants to really eat an elephant, but it's a good example. So, Jason, what have you learned over time on how to better relate and deal with adversity?
Great question. And I love that the community's out today. We got a lot of comments coming in, so that's wonderful. The one thing that I'm thinking about is that we to Dave's point, we've all been through it. I think as you said, Don, as you get older, it's easier. You're kind of saying now it's, there's a long path behind you and a shorter path ahead of you kind of situation, but at the same time, kind of, tongue in cheek, but at the same time, you've been through it and you've learned those lessons and you've dealt with it. And so the first time you experience something, it's like, oh my God, oh my goodness. And then next time you're like, oh, there's that again. Oh, there's that. And it doesn't have to be the exact same situation. Hopefully it's not, but it's the same type of situation. I wanted to share a couple of things you're talking about right now, notes to keep relevant in this conversation because we're moving fast and some great stuff's coming up. Buddha says that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I think that's a big one, is that things are going to show up in your life. And talking about obstacles, I love that we're talking about obstacles in this case, because that's something I talk a lot about, where obstacles, and this is about that mindset about pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, because people see obstacles like, oh, it's a bad thing. No, obstacles means you're on your journey. If I was trying to walk through a room full of furniture and I didn't care where I was going, I wouldn't have any obstacles because I could just float through that room. But if I was trying to get from one end to the door, things might come in my way. And that means I'm on a journey. I'm on my path. And so as obstacles come up, say, good, thank you. That tells me I'm going somewhere. I'm not rudderless floating in the sea. I'm actually going somewhere. And I might have to course correct. I might have to change my direction to get around this obstacle, go over it, go under it, whatever that looks like. But it lets me know I'm there. So that's in a good way. And Don, you mentioned control. And that's something that's so important about difficult situations, is that you have to feel that and know that you have some sort of control. And whether that's just your mindset or actually taking that action, take an action and do something that will give you better. I usually, not to go too long on this, but I'm very passionate, as you could tell, about this. If I was to take a pair of pliers and hold them on your finger and do, let's say, whatever, I don't know if this is right or not because I haven't been in mechanics in a lot of years, but 10 foot-pounds of torque toward your finger, that would hurt to a certain degree. But if you were to take those same pliers and hold your finger for 10 foot-pounds of torque, it wouldn't hurt as bad, because you could stop at any time. You have control. You know how long you're going to do it for. And so it's okay. But if it's that external force that you don't have control of, it could make it seem a lot worse. So letting go, knowing that it's going to work out, and taking action is huge for not getting into adversity.
Well, I love that pain is something that's going to happen, but suffering's optional. And it's also understanding what is the challenge to you. And most people, they have issues with ego, with how people think of them. And that has nothing to do with the issue. It has something to do with you. And most times to get things right, you got to get right because you can't change what's outside of you. You don't know when it's going to happen. The other key element is not being alone because a lot of people suffer by themselves because they think I'm the only person who's dealing with this. I'm so this, I'm so that. And pretty soon they're just magnifying the issue and looping it in their heads. And they're defeated before they even get going. And having a support group, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your church, whatever it is so essential because you need relief. They won't fix the problem, but they'll put you in a better position to deal with it. And when you feel like, hey, everybody's got it, it's nothing special. And it's only you that determines how important it is. But before we get too far, and Jason's right, we got a boatload of people here who have some wonderful comments. Zoom party host Omar, one of the best, no kidding. I've worked with him. I work closer with him on things. And you know, one thing about Omar, he's always moving forward. He's always striving to do better, but he's always including people along the way. And you know, when you can turn me into we, you don't look so important. And you don't want to be that important. You'd rather share a load than be the load. And that changes over time. And sometimes just saying, okay, I screwed up. Sometimes what happens to you, you deserve if you can trace it back. Well, if I wasn't doing this behavior and I wasn't doing that behavior, I probably wouldn't be in the situation. It's not to have regrets, but to understand that tomorrow I can make a change. And along with control is knowing, hey, tomorrow I'll start eating a little bit better. Tomorrow I'll start exercising a little bit more. And whatever is comfortable is where you begin. And that's at least you're saying, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was. And I know I'm moving in the right direction. And that whole saying is everything you do in life either takes you further to your goal or farther away. Right. And everybody knows where they are, what they've been doing, who they've been hanging out with, and know the direction they're going. So it shouldn't be a total surprise when ultimately it leads to whatever it is, but it wasn't there before. It doesn't have to be there in the future. With that said, Dennis says, get help every morning and help others helps avoid hell. You know, it's company. During the worst situations, if you have somebody with you going through it for you or with you, eases the ride. Terrence, another great guy, says, as John Lennon said, life is what happens while you're making other plans. And I think that's so important. A couple of hellos here. We've got Richard Hogan, I haven't seen. Please always live through grace, nature, and experience. Best wishes. Well, those are wonderful words of encouragement. And it doesn't take a lot. I think that's what's important. A couple kind words, you know. If all you can do is say thank you, you've said a lot. And I think it's getting grounded and counting your blessings. You know, you can't take everything good for granted and make bad your whole focus. So with that said, Dave, it looks like we picked a great word and everybody's digging in with us.
Yeah, it's very encouraging to see the great responses and the thoughts that we're provoking in each other here. And that's what it's about. And Jason, again, I'm going to go back to, I love that you keep going back to community. Each week that we've done this, it's community. And it's beyond just, you know, friendships. It's networks of people like Don and Jason. I've never met you, but I know that if I have something I can relate to you and say, hey, I'm going up against something. What can I do? I need a different perspective, you know. And I'm gonna pull one from you, Jason. And I'm gonna start with a quote as well with Confucius. You know, take it back a few steps is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And before we take that step, you know, we've got to have those goals. And Don, you were talking a little bit about, you know, in the comment there about, you know, life happens when you're making other plans. So you've got to have some sort of focus of what you want in life, or you'll have no adversity. Everything will just be happy because you don't care. but we're humans. We want to go somewhere personally and together with someone else, as a team, as a family, and individually, we have goals in our lives. So it takes some deep introspection. What is it that I bring to the table? What is it that I want to have in life? And where are the gaps? What is that, quote, adversity that could come to me because I don't have the skills yet? And what do I need to do to get there? And again, in that process, community becomes a big factor. So it allows us, by having the goal of what it is we want to achieve, to say, well, this adversity is just a stepping stone on my process, or I can take the perspective of it's teaching me something that will build me up and adapt my goal along the way and strengthen it. We always look at adversity as a negative, and it can be a positive very easily if we've taken the time to look internally and say, where is it I want to be and what is this teaching me?
Great tips. I hope everybody's listening and learning from those. I think it's all perspective too, and it's all conditional and relative. If you lose $10 and you got $10 million, that $10 loss is insignificant. If all you had was $20 and you lost 10, that's half of your wealth, and that could be important. But here's another key critical area is balance, right? If all your eggs are in one basket and you drop that basket, you're in trouble. If you have a well-rounded life, no one area should be that overwhelming. And the other thing is, how do you respond and how proud of you are your response? I know like sports is a great example. I had a neighbor that if the Broncos lost on Sunday, you wouldn't want to talk to them till Wednesday because they carried it with them. It was something. And to me, 10 seconds after the game, I'm done with it, right? And I had no control over it to begin with. And at the end of the day, you say it was just a game, and there's more games. And I think at that point, there's a saying, I don't root for anybody who doesn't root for me. And if it was my son or grandson's game, that would be more important than a Super Bowl ticket to me, because that has meaning, that has relativity to me and to them. And it also gives you an ability to impact something and also make people around you proud of you. And I think that's important. If you act like a crazy person after a loss that no one really understands, it makes you look worse and it makes you feel worse because now you've endangered your relationships. And I think the other thing is there's too much of everybody for their own good, right? If you do things for others, if you get gratified through their victories, your issues don't mean as much, and they shouldn't. So I think it's about adjusting, reflecting, reviewing. I tried this, worked so well, but not as much as it is. Tomorrow I'm going to start doing this. And how do you go through it and then feel proud of yourself? And, adversity that's in the rear view mirror is not adversity anymore. It's actually a building block. And sometimes people who have climbed huge mountains, first thing they're thinking is, what's the next mountain? They might have been complaining all along the way, suffering, but when they finally got there, they got there, right? And all of a sudden they know they can do it. And I think to Jason's point with control, when you have confidence, when you know that whatever comes your way, you're going to do the best you can with what you got. And that's all anybody can expect from anybody. And I think that's what life is experience. Without the valleys, there are no mountains, and vice versa. And no matter how much you're on top, believe it's not going to last forever. And no matter how much you're at the bottom, it doesn't have to last forever. So it's part of the life cycle. Jason, there's so much to this subject. I think the key is where do you start and how do you start and how comfortable are you with going out there and exposing yourself in the best way possible to things that happen to people every day.
Yeah, it's so true. When you talked about meaning and giving it meaning is so important. And I want to talk about that in a little bit. We still have some time, which is great today. We got a good conversation going. The definition, because I looked up the definition today, because I was like, let me be a little prepared for this conversation, because it is so layered. There is so much to it. And something that came up is just to paraphrase it, just continue adversity being continued difficulty or misfortune. Adversity is a slippery slope, and in the truest meaning of that term, which we use in different ways. But once you start going that direction, I visual for effect, right? So you have to stop the flow. You have to stop that motion. If you start slipping down that hill of where it goes from misfortune to adversity, and it starts going for a long time, you have to stop sliding. And what does that look like? And what does it look like for you? And awareness. And oh, hey, this is going down a way. There's been times in my life where, some stuff has come up, and I've seen it as being negative and bad, and I've kind of wallowed in it. Sometimes we can find ourselves, and it's that, I don't know, it's that feeling that can be comforting of that negativity. And that's a whole other conversation, but you just kind of let it go, and you let it go, and you let it go. And instead of saying, wait a minute, I can take this one small step. You both have mentioned that. We've all mentioned that today, about what's the one action I can take to stop sliding down this hill, to where taking this situation that I'm not happy with, that's not getting me my goals, that's not letting me live my life purpose, whatever it looks like to you. How do I stop going in that direction? And course, we use course correct a lot in the last 4 years, but that's what you have to do. And just say, wait a minute, let's stop the sliding first. Okay, what can I do to keep this from continuing? Now, how do I turn it around? And what's the opposite of it? Patanjali says something to the effect of, if you have a negative thought, think the opposite. Think the opposite in a lot more difficult, in a harder situation, basically. So change that mindset. So I hope that made sense.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times you got to distinguish between a temporary adversity and a permanent adversity, right? If you lose a loved one, they're not coming back. Now, the question is, how do you deal with it? And not everything's roses. No one expects you to be dancing in the street the next day. But, maybe it's selfish, but always reflect on the person and saying, how would they want me to be feeling right now? How would they want me to be living? And when my mother was in hospice, and I would go there every day before work, after dinner, and I would make sure everybody in the family was there when somebody wasn't. And we'd have conversations, and that was the beauty of it. We had more than enough time to talk. And I remember her saying one night, are you going to cry for me after I'm gone? And I said, well, sure, not a problem. I mean, it'd come natural. And she said, no, I don't want you ever thinking like that. I want you to be a good husband. I want you to be a good father. I want you to continue to go on with your future and not be held back. And I said, well, that's so generous, right? Because you're the one who's leaving. And here's what you still want to provide for me. And I never really thought anybody totally leaves you anyways. And I think that's where you distinguish, hey, this is a temporary situation. Sometimes you can quantify it. Well, it's going to take this much money to get rid of this issue. And a lot of times, okay, let's just be done with it. Because to carry that around, to have to deal with it is such a distraction. And that's why I was never big on attorneys, because they tend to exasperate or extend things. And I'm like, hey, what's it going to take to make this go away? And is this fair and reasonable? And the other thing is taking responsibility and accountability and say, yeah, I was to blame. I might be able to get out of this or find a loophole, but I know deep in my heart the person's right and the person deserves something. And you feel better about doing the right thing, even if it's not something you have to do. And they say integrity is something you learn when you're in the dark with yourself. because no one's going to see what you're doing. And there's times you could say, I could get away with this, and no one will ever know. But you know what? You'll always know. And do you want that as part of your legacy? And I think that's so important. So there's so many avenues. And if it is short term, no, it's going to go away. It's just a matter when. What do you got to pay? If it's long term, you just make an accommodation. You know, if you can't move as fast as you do, you work around that and move slower if that's what you have to do. But I think people have to get honest and straight with themselves first before they go out there and just start flailing and trying to take care of stuff. Carrie says, I am sure elephants taste like chicken. Well, I'll have to take your word for it because I haven't had elephant in forever. Dennis says, got to go and break fast now, stepping out on time for sure. And Omar comes back with, they are great tips for sure. And you know what? I wish I had these kind of shows when I was coming up. I could learn from others, grow from others, because there have been times where I wasted way too much time, spent too much energy on things that could have been done far differently. And instead of fighting it, you know, too many people are like, they go right into action when sometimes they should go into reserve or pause or neutral and allow themselves to gather the facts, to get some expert advice. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. Now it's whatever you want to make of it, how long you want to continue to think and worry about it. And you're not helping yourself at that point. So, Dave, I know everything we're talking about. There's not a person walking the earth that isn't thinking about something that they'd rather not think about. But at the same time, who wants to be Jello? You know, who just wants to be, I can take anything. Stoicism has its value, but at a certain point, it doesn't. Dave.
This too shall pass comes to mind. No matter what we're going through, this too shall pass. And as my dad will always tell me, whenever we come up with some struggle, just remember the immortal words of Paul McCartney, let it be. Just let it be. It's going to pass. It's going to happen. We just got to go through life. Sometimes we have to experience the struggle. Sometimes it's going to take really quick decision making and action. Sometimes it's going to take some machinations of experience to say, I finally got through it. As you guys were talking, it occurred to me that a lot of people today are in the doom and gloom world of adversity is the only thing that I will ever feel, whether it's politics, employment, school, family, relationships. Oh my gosh, just the world is going to end. The relationships will never get better. Well, just take a step back and realize it'll pass. Just let it be. Okay. We have to go through the adversity. And Jason, as you were talking, it occurred to me that what I do is when I realize that I'm in this, oh my gosh, this day is just getting worse and it's just getting worse and just nothing seems to be going right. Just a quick breath and just go, okay, did anything change in that moment? No. Did anything get worse? Probably not. Did anything get better? I don't know. I was absorbed in my breath. I don't know if anything got better or worse. It's going to happen. I mean, things are happening right now around us while we're in this conversation that we have no control over. Just let it be. Okay. And I'm not trying to be a complete stoic and just, life's just going to happen. But at the same time, I can't control everything, just what I can control in my life. Whether the world goes to the end with an asteroid, I can't control that. I can control things around me, the people around me, how I approach my thoughts. And sometimes it's hard. You've got to make hard decisions. As you said earlier, someone said earlier about 20, 30 minutes ago, you've got to make the hard choices, and the people around you, maybe they're not fitting your life cycle. at this moment. So you don't have to cut them off completely, but you may not have to be around them full time anymore either. You know, and maybe in 6 months they'll be back in that circle because you've changed, they've changed. And the adversity builds us, it strengthens us. You know, think of a weight trainer. You know, it's an adversity to get from 0 pounds to 100 pounds of lifting, you know, whatever the weight is. But over time, that strengthens us because we've worked with a trainer. We've had people help spot us. We've seen the improvement over time. And in this fast-paced world that we're in, everybody wants, I want immediate gratification. Well, learn from the lessons that you're building, and the gratification will come. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's definitely where people should focus because, you know, I saw this Tony Robbins short video, and he had mentioned 3 things I can remember too, but he said the key to happiness is focusing on things you can control and not spending any time thinking about things you can't control. And the other aspect was focus on the future, not the past, right? So if you're just focusing on what you can do and what you can have going forward, too many people beat themselves up because of a tragedy or a trauma that's already been played out, already done, but they go revisit it again and they question it and they wonder what if and this and that. And you're just giving up your present and your future, investing in a past that's not going to change. It's like watching the same movie expecting a different ending. And at a certain point, I think living vicariously through others is important. Like today actually happens to be my 46th wedding anniversary, right? And I'm so grateful for having a wife that's gotten better when things ever got worse. You know, everybody can be special when they're got a great, you know, achievement and they're running really cool, but it's when you're down and out that the person next to you says, it's okay, it'll be okay, we're going to be fine. And I think that's where you got to classify certain things. Is this something that's going to be so dramatic and so harmful, or is this a bump on the road? Is this like paying a parking ticket? You know, whatever it is, you got to keep moving forward. You can't let yourself go backwards. And if you're really there for everybody all the time, you're building goodwill that they're going to be there. So I'm always looking, especially when I'm with family, is where is everybody at right now? Is someone having a hard day? Is someone dealing with a challenge? Well, what can I do sincerely to make it better? You know, I know when I sent my kids off to college and I kept thinking how much stress are kids having and how much are they focusing on grades and everything else. And I told both of them, you're here to get the benefit of time, of exposure. I know how smart you are. I don't care what your grades are. I just want you to be happy and healthy because that's the only thing that matters to me. And when you take the pressure off of people to say, you need to do this, you have to become that, you know, and you're living in someone else's shadow and you may be pleasing them, but you're not pleasing yourself. And at a certain point, you're living a false life. And some people continue to find a way to be comfortably uncomfortable. And other people have a way of saying, hey, you know, it's my time, you know, it's my place, and I want to be happy. The other thing is finding simple pleasures that can get your mind off of things. I know I've got these coconut candies or whatever you want to call them, these chocolate things. And once in a while, I'll just have one to have a treat, right? I reserve them. I can knock them down like crazy, but one's enough. And one's enough to give me a timeout and just focus on enjoying each piece of that coconut. And it's amazing what your mind can do. And if you take stories of people who have been in prison for 30 years or had all this and they come out, you never know it. because they came to terms with it. It wasn't right, but they made it as right as they could, and that's the best you can do. So, Jason, what's your thoughts? I mean, we're 2/3 into this, and it sounds like we're just scratching the scratch of the surface.
Yeah, and I love, it's funny. I'm a mindfulness and meditation teacher as well as whatever I do. So thank you, Dave, for talking about taking that breath. I try to keep everything relevant to the conversation. That's definitely relevant, where you just ground yourself in the present moment. And one of the teachers, I can't remember if it was John Kabat-Zinn or Jack Kornfield, but they say it's Jack. Jack says, mend where you can touch, to both of your points. So don't worry about everything that's going on in the world. Be aware of it, but don't worry about it. Don't let it affect where you live. Mend what you can touch. So your life, your community, your neighborhood, make change there, because that change ripples out. Change within ourselves, as within, so without. We talk about this. I talk about this a fair amount. Perception is projection. Your world is how you see it. Imprint peace and happiness in the world, and your world becomes peaceful and happy. And that's not simplistic in the sense that, oh, everything's fine, I'm just not seeing it. The reality is that we affect our world. And so by taking that breath, by taking that moment and centering yourself, saying, okay, where am I truly at? What's really going on? Can help you deal with diversity for sure. Because once again, that slippery slope, things start to they feel out of control, and then they get out of control, because you don't worry about one thing, you worry about everything. And that's a place that takes you to can take you to a very negative spot. I looked at, courage and diversity. It said, the definition, it said, being brave and resilient in the face of difficult circumstances. And brave and resilient means different things for different people, but it's about facing it honestly and with an open heart, and being like, okay, where are we at? Where am I going? What do I need? You mentioned Tony Robbins. Tony was trained in NLP, neurolinguistics, similar. I am a master practitioner in NLP, and it's about the simplest way to say about NLP is it's using the language of the mind to get the results you want. So we all use our minds in different ways, and I just mentioned that jargonistic for a reason. When I think about adversity, I think about being alone. The picture in my head when I think of adversity is being alone. And then when I think of, things going well and stuff, I think about being in community. And I think one of the challenges that comes to all of us, of a certain generation for sure, but for a lot of people, is you don't want to be a burden. That term is really challenging because, I'll just figure it out myself. Oh, I'll just grind it out. Oh, I'll just make it happen. Oh, I'm responsible for me, and I don't want to burden anybody. The reality is that it's harder on other people when you don't ask for help, to be honest. If you've ever been around someone that's struggling and you wanted to be there for them and like, no, I'll figure it out. It's hard for the other people to not be able to support them in some way, and also to watch that person continue to go down a path of adversity. So, be open. And the day of the internet, those of us that were alive before this internet thing, you had few options. The people you interacted with physically, that's who you could go to. But now there's programs like this. There's so much out there. There's podcasts. There's, I have friends that I've made through LinkedIn one of them's in Portugal right now, and she reached out and said, hey, I got some stuff going on. Let's connect. And I'm just trying to figure my schedule out to be able to do that. But we have that opportunity now. So the more we can connect, the more we can help each other, the better we'll all be off.
Yeah, I think that's so absolutely true. And also, you have to be thoughtful towards the people who you want to be thoughtful towards you. And the last thing I want to do is just unload on them.
Right.
And all of a sudden now they got your issues and they didn't even have a chance to help you. The key is what can you share that they can help you with, but also not take them down with you, because after a while you become a negative situation where if every time you call, everything is woe is me, the world's coming to an end, and they're sitting there like, well, I was happy before you called, and now when you left me, I'm taking that with me.
Right.
I think there's a generosity to it. The other thing is yourself that today I feel like $1 million. I wake up tomorrow and I feel like I don't even exist. And again, the question is, how did the world change on me so quick? And the world didn't change on you. You changed on yourself. And to talk about Tony Robbins, everybody who's significant that helps so many people has a get ready routine every day. It could be exercise with meditation, with good nutrition, with this and that, and they have to have that to get their day going right. If they just rush out of bed and jump into stuff, they're not prepared. So how strong can you make yourself, especially in your mind, to give yourself the best chance at the best day you can? And knowing that today could be the first day of the rest of your life, everything that just happened in your life all these years have positioned you now to pivot.
Right.
What gets you there doesn't take you all the way at times. And you have to be methodical, and you got to give things up before they give you up. Don't wait till the last drop to start looking for a replacement. Build reserve. And also don't build expectations that are unrealistic. A lot of people want to lose 20 pounds in 3 days. And if you can, it's not healthy probably, and it's definitely not sustainable. But if you can start making a small adjustment that I'm going to eat a vegetable instead of an ice cream, I'm going to do this instead of this, little changes, but pleasurable changes, because there's things I eat that are just as important and valuable that don't have calories, don't have a lot of negative stuff. And again, as you get older, you need to make more accommodations, more compromises in a way that you can't do at a certain age what you did at 20. And there's a point at a certain age you don't want to act like a 20-year-old. I mean, how many people resist aging? And it becomes so obvious to everybody around you that you're actually looking more foolish than you are younger. And sometimes you got to let nature take its course. You got to go with the flow. Most people who don't live long haven't allowed themselves to make those accommodations. This is the way it is. This is the way it's going to be. And hell or high water, I don't care. Well, the worst part is I don't care. Well, how could you be so emphatic and so dramatic and then say, I don't care? And that's where a workout buddy or someone can help you, especially someone that loves you, provides trust for you, and is courageous enough, to Jason's point, to be as honest without being judgmental, without being punitive. I know I see people, and you do find yourself resisting. I know some people are doing too much drinking, and it's starting to affect their life, and they're working around it, but I know where it's leading, and it's not sustainable. But then again, if a person's not ready for change or is resisting change, you're going to have an issue when you say that, right? You might even destroy a friendship trying to help a friend. So it's a matter of at what point will someone let you in, and at what point can you continue to expand your influence? And it goes for so many other activities. And at the same time, how many times have you made wrong judgments? Probably about half the time, but every judgment you thought you were 100% right until it played out, right? And you say to yourself, well, humility, modesty, being humble goes a long way. Asking small questions before you provide big answers. Well, let me know a little bit about this. And then maybe with context and information, you say, well, I was off base then. I'm glad I didn't just jump in with an answer, because everybody wants to have a voice. And I think, to Jason's point, shows like this, our collaboration group, builds family, builds a community, and it's consistent. I think consistency is so important. You can't be a best friend and a worst enemy and confuse people. That's what they say about parenting. There's no right way to parent except being consistent. so kids don't get confused. If you make a mistake and you get punished, well, you got to keep that same thing going. Or someone will say, well, I better not talk to them when they're feeling like this because this is how it's going to go. I might as well wait till they're happy and comfortable and slide it in and maybe get something. But, at that point, along with other things in life, you're playing a game. And nobody wants to play a game. People want to live life and not just do some, work throughs. So, Dave, we cover so much area in such a short period of time, and I hope everybody is relating to it, but also take an inventory.
Yeah, I've been thinking here about a different tack based on some of the things we've said recently. It's okay to support somebody who's going through adversity. It's okay to be the leaning post that they can come to. And it related to me is a story of I had a guy who used to work for me who just unloaded on me for a couple of weeks, just almost daily in texts. And I saved some screenshots of these texts, and they were just I don't want to get into the details, but he just had struggles with, oh, the government is doing this over in Afghanistan, and I was a part of it because I was on a ship in Pearl Harbor. And I'm like, okay, dude, I get it. You're struggling morality, ethically. But then he finally just decided that he can unload on me because I was in Afghanistan at a point where something bad happened in a part of the country that I had nothing to do with. And I said, Paul, I should have said his name, maybe. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a while. But I said, hey, I can't take this anymore. I'm here to support you. And when you're ready to get the help you need without tearing me down in the process, come back to me and let's talk. So there's got to be a strength on your part to not just be a punching bag for these things. And you will actually, I found in this particular case, that was really kind of the wake-up call he needed to address his adversity and the struggles that he was going through of living in the past or something external to him and taking it internally so deeply. About a month ago, I contacted a mutual friend of ours who had essentially cut him off as well. And I said, hey, have you talked to Paul lately? Have you heard anything? He said, no, I haven't. And then 2 days later, Paul texted me and said, hey, Dave, I finally got some help for my alcoholism, for my depression. I'm on a better path. I still think there's some issues. I'm more willing to talk about it friendly. So sometimes the tough love has to be there. And lastly, I know we're running out of time. I just say, we can't live in the past. That causes depression. People say we can't live in the future. That's what causes anxiety. People will say living in the now. And I go back to Dan Millman and reading, I've listened to it tons of times, is The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And part of what he advocates is, where are you? Well, I'm here. Well, where is here? Well, I'm right here. I'm physically in the universe somewhere. I'm right where I am. What time is it? Well, the time is now. I can't predict what's going to happen. I can't even say that I'm going to move my hand in 30 seconds. Sometimes that's internal, but I can't change that I moved it 30 seconds ago. I can only do what I'm here right now thinking and doing. And again, there's an external piece where I have to react to some stimuli. I can only control in here right now how I approach every problem, every individual, and everything in my environment. And I know we're coming up on the hour, so I'll end it there.
No, I think that's very valuable, and it is what it is. I know that's a simple saying, and you are who you are. And the more you accept what is, the more you accept who you are. And also, some things that you grew up with won't serve you in the future, right? You ask yourself, why do I do that? I don't even know why I keep doing that. Well, it must have been someone told you that's the thing to do, or you modeled what somebody else was doing. And again, that's someone else. And if you say to yourself, I know one thing, if you need less, you have less pressure to get more. And I think COVID proved that. How many people came home from work found out that when they didn't have to pay child care, they didn't need a second car, they didn't have cleaning bills, they didn't have this, that they got a chance to be with their family, to be raising their kids and saying, okay, we're not going out to eat 6 times a week anymore. It's not important. But freedom is everything. And if you're free to choose, you have options. When you box yourself into a situation where it's out of control, you're just drifting along without direction, it is frustrating. And the other thing is, to me, exercise is vital. They've proven that if you exercise properly, it does more for your mental health than antidepressants, right? And so why not make that choice if it makes you feel better, if it's natural, if there's no real cost to it? Because that saying, the best things in life are free, is true. People don't take enough time to look at the trees, listen to the birds, watch the sunrise.
You saw my post this morning, didn't you?
No, I didn't actually, but I think I liked it for sure. Yeah. I don't know if I read the whole thing, but
well, it's about getting back to nature, get out in the sunlight, experience life. Don't just sit around. And it's very short, but it doesn't say all that. But as you know, Don, I'm a big advocate of movement. It's helped me get beyond my mental health issues and get into mental fitness. Because every time we contract a muscle, the happiness protein, they call it, gets sent to our brain. So,
well, you're absolutely right, because I know when I don't do it, which is hardly ever, I'm not the same the rest of the day. It's like never brushing your teeth that day or something. It's just not the way you're comfortable. And today it was 37 degrees when I woke up, which is a little bit on the chilly side. But it also makes you feel more robust when that cold wind kind of hits you. And it is like early, around 6:45 in the morning, where the sun's starting to get a little hotter. By the end of the walk, you're already got your jacket unzipped, you got your hat off, and you find yourself rejuvenated. And sometimes it's like a battery charger. You got to hook up to it, get fortified, and take it to the next step, and then have a beautiful breakfast, and that's always, so there's a routine. It takes effort, but once you create that habit, it's easy to continue. It's the ones you have to give something up that you're used to accept something you're not, that makes for not the best integration. So Jason, coming up on top of the hour, we covered a lot of ground with adversity. I think any key word would have still kept us in the same conversation, but maybe flavor. What's your thoughts?
So Stoicism came up with us today for some reason. So that's, I'll just end with that, where, you are not your circumstances. We have to remember that. And the last thing I will say is sometimes we have to get out of our own way. You were talking about the past and about how we live in the past. Those lessons you learned in the past may not be serving you now, and that might be why you're finding these adversities come up. So sometimes you have to step out of your own way, let that happen, and to truly live your life that's going forward, not the life of the past, but the life of your future.
Yeah, I think that's such a great summary of what we're trying to share here. Is there's hope in the next minute that you can bring yourself in some small degree to build on it. Everybody needs a foothold. If you're climbing or something, you got to get a foothold and then figure out where you're going next and get another foothold. And it's the climb. It's, they always say it's never the destination, but the journey. And how colorful of a life do people have? Just being born is a miracle. The odds of that happening, just having a life to lead and people around you. And we're living in the best country in the world that offers the most freedom, the most opportunity. And it also creates the biggest amount of complainers and cynics and skeptics. But that's a huge opportunity for the people who take the other road, who could be angry, who could be mean, and can justify it. Well, this is what happened to me. And if that, there's really quick a story of two young boys, and their dad was an alcoholic, a criminal. He ended up in prison, just the worst possible person in the world. And one of the boys turned out to be a very successful attorney and a member of their community. And when they asked him how come, it's like, well, if you had a dad like mine, what would you do, or who would you become? And the other brother followed in his dad's footsteps. And his answer was, well, if you had a dad like mine who did everything he did, what would you expect their son to be? Right? So it's all, who are you modeling? Take your hits when they come, accept them, move on. You can't continue to go back, but you can continue to go forward and be the example of who you want other people to be and the model you can prevent. And that's where you get a benefit from your losses, because you save somebody else from going through them, and now you got a dividend that gets paid to you. So final words, Dave?
I think it's all great stuff. I don't want to belabor any more points.
Well, that's great, because it's always good to be on time, and it's also good to value everybody else's time. I want to thank the audience. It's been very diverse. I know everybody who's been commenting and sharing, and that's what makes it worthwhile, is because you have people waiting for your show, waiting for what you have to say, and enjoying it and thanking you for it, and it makes you want to do it again. So with that said, we'll do it again tomorrow. Actually, Jason's joining Kelly because it is Mental Health Awareness Week. And I know Jason Wilson's having the show this week. And Kelly has been great with supporting Jason. Really been able to leverage our group here to create more host opportunities. And, I think at the end of the day, caring is sharing. And the more people could be on other people's shows, experience other people's situations, just expands their reach, and also awareness and value. And it's so lovely to be part of something bigger than yourself, knowing that you fit in, but you don't have to shoulder all that responsibility by yourself. So with that said, thank you all. Come back in 23 hours if you can. Can't thank Dave and Jason enough. I learned so much from them along with them. So individually and collectively, I believe we're a really powerful source for positive change for others. And we'd love to hear the things you do from what we say. And I know Jason, myself, and Dave are open to comments and suggestions. And I know everybody has a few minutes for anybody who is aligned and wants to learn and grow more together. So with that, thank you again. Talk to you tomorrow if possible. And I'm a Monday through Thursday guy, so if you can't make it tomorrow,